Hi, I am out of my reading slump. Who would have hoped? And we are near June, so I thought I could film a June TBR. April has been going great, May has been going even better, so I have pretty high hopes for June. I also have a project in mind, so there's a lot of exciting things coming. So without further ado, let's get into it. Like I said, May is going amazingly in terms of reading, not so good in terms of my health. I have a very annoying cold, so I do apologize for my voice probably increasingly disappearing throughout this video. And with that said, I am hoping that I will finish my reading goals for May, but I'm not 100% sure. I have started reading the There Is No Antimemetics Division yesterday in the evening. I read 20 pages yesterday. I continued reading it today, but I am incredibly congested, and at the moment it's a huge challenge. So I'll see if I can finish it before Monday. If not, then whatever pages are left, I will include in my June reading. And I thought we could continue with book club books. There's quite a few. There's no Antimemetics Division is one of the book club picks, but that's a pick for June, and so I'm not in a huge rush to finish that. But then there's also several more, and the next one on my list is Creation Lake by Rachel Kushner. And the premise of this book sounds quite interesting. The main character is an undercover agent and she's sent to France to investigate this, I guess, a community, sort of a cult. And their idea is that primitive living is the way. So I believe they live in caves. I'm quite excited about the synopsis, though I'm not really excited about the reviews. The rating on Goodreads is not the best, though I have heard somebody talk about it very highly, and that somebody is a person I know in real life, and I think his reading taste is actually quite good. So based on that, I have pretty high expectations. This is a pick for the book club that I'm a part of. We're going to be reading this at the very start of July, or we're going to be discussing it at the very start of July. Worst case, if I don't like it, I don't have to finish it. I will still be interested to come and listen to a discussion. Usually, it's quite a lively discussion, especially if people don't like the book or if we have sort of a mixed bag of opinions and reviews. So, quite excited for this one. And the next one is a book that I have chosen for my own book club for July. Though the meeting is very late in July, so this is definitely not going to be a high priority. And the book in question is A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms by George R. R. Martin. I have just recently seen the TV adaptation and I really enjoyed the TV series. I believe it covers maybe a third or a fourth of the book, so I'm quite excited to see what goes next. Really enjoyed the characters, really enjoyed the story. It's very George R. R. Martin based on the Game of Thrones TV series adaptation. I technically have read George R. R. Martin before. I read the Game of Thrones and then whatever the name of the second book is, or I read a part of the second book. But that was in translation to Russian and a good few years ago, back when fantasy wasn't really my genre, and I found these books quite difficult because of the density and size. I think now, I'm saying it as I'm looking at it because she's been teasing me from the shelf for a long time now. I think if I picked it up now, I would actually enjoy it a fair bit, but I thought I could use this as a bit of a teaser. It's set in the same world, I believe, about 100, yeah, almost a century before Game of Thrones, about 100 years before the events of Game of Thrones. So some of the characters are sort of the prequel stories to some of the families and some of the houses. I'm quite excited to read that and see how I like it. And then if I'm really enjoying this, then it will only make sense to continue and read the Game of Thrones. And the next one is both a book club pick and a part of my little project. I decided that for the rest of this year, I want to focus on two authors that I really enjoy, that I have read a fair bit from, that I want to continue reading, that I sort of want to, I guess, complete them and read everything that they have published. And the first author that I have planned is John Gwynne. And the book that I will be reading in June is The Hunger of the Gods. And it is my selection for the series book club that I lead. We have read The Shadow of the Gods in May. We had a meeting in May. And in July, we're meeting for The Hunger of the Gods. We really enjoyed the first book. I have pretty high hopes for the second book. I've had really, really good reviews, really good things about it. It's quite a chunky one, but very exciting. It's a beautiful edition. So yeah, really looking forward to this one. And then I will finish the Bloodsworn Saga, and then I have a trilogy that comes after The Faithful and the Fallen, left from John Gwynne, and obviously the book that he's coming out in September with, I believe. So that will then be me done with John Gwynne, and I can just continue catching up whenever he releases books. And the other author that I want to focus on is probably my favorite when it comes to fantasy. His trilogy was definitely my favorite fantasy work, and it's Joe Abercrombie. And the book that I will be reading in June is The Heroes. I absolutely love the First Law trilogy. It was one of the first fantasy trilogies or fantasy books that I have ever read, and I absolutely fell in love with his writing, with his characters, with the genre, with the trilogy. Hence why I continued reading so much of fantasy, so I have him to thank for that. I also absolutely adore him as a person. He's hilarious, he's charming. His works are absolutely beautiful. I have read The First Law, I have read Best of Cold, I have read The Devils, so I have the First Law world to continue with. I don't plan on reading, I believe it's the Shattered Sea trilogy. I'm not entirely sure of the name of the trilogy. That is his YA works. I have seen very mixed reviews. I'm not quite drawn to his YA writing as much as I am to his adult fantasy writing. But maybe once I've finished with the First Law, then I could pick that up and see if I enjoy it. And if not, then there's no hard feelings. I can just put it down. But The Heroes is quite an exciting one. I have heard really good things about it. It's featuring the character from the First Law trilogy. His name is Black Dove. I don't know if Dove is the way to pronounce his name. I have never had audiobooks, but that's how I pronounce it in my head. So I apologize if this is the wrong pronunciation, but this is the one that lives in my head rent free. So I'm really excited about this book. Once I'm finished with this, I will then move on to Red Country and then to the Age of Madness trilogy, and hopefully that will be done by the end of this year. And alongside John Gwynne and Joe Abercrombie, I am planning on reading another author, though I will gonna have to continue into 2027 and potentially into 2028. He does have quite a few books published under his name, and the author that I'm talking about is Brandon Sanderson, and the book that I'll be reading in June is Tress of the Emerald Sea. Brandon Sanderson absolutely captured my heart when I read the Mistborn trilogy. I really enjoyed it. I then read Yumi and the Nightmare Painter, and I have just finished The Isles of the Emberdug. I enjoyed pretty much everything I have read by him. I think I have rated every single book 5 stars. Mistborn was potentially my favorite fantasy book ever. I had a lot of fun reading it. So I'm really excited to read Tress of the Emerald Sea. I have heard wonderful things about it. And then I think I will potentially move on to Mistborn Era 2. Because in 2027, my plan is to finally pick up Stormlight Archives. I am very, very, very intimidated by the size of those books, but I have heard only good things, and I feel like it's such a fantasy staple that you can't really miss it and you can't really leave it unread. So I'm really looking forward to diving into that world. But at the moment, I think my TBI is a little bit too dense to pick up over a thousand page books. So that is a project for the future. And then I also have a bit of romance. It's L. Kennedy's second book in the Off Campus series. It's called The Mistake. I have read The Deal back in 2025, I think. And it's actually one of my favorite romance books. I really enjoyed it. And they've just come out with a TV adaptation called Off Campus on Amazon Prime. And I believe they're planning to do a book per season. So I'm just finishing the first season. I'm really enjoying it. And it made me a little bit nostalgic for the series and for the world, or I guess for the university. So I'm really looking forward to reading The Mistake. I think every book is about a specific couple, and then there's a bunch of spin offs and another series that is set in the same university, but I think a different era of the characters or something along those lines. So really looking forward to reading this one. It's a very short book. Her books are, I think, incredibly easy to read. They're very down to earth is probably the way that I would approach them. They're not unrealistic, at least in my eyes. They're not overall too romantic. They're not too smutty. So really enjoyable read. Really looking forward to reading The Mistake and then seeing it on the screen whenever the TV adaptation comes out. And next on the list, I have a book that has been sitting on my shelf for maybe a little bit too long, and I have been planning on reading it for maybe a little bit too long, and is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I haven't read anything by Margaret Atwood, though I do own another one of her books, but I've heard really good things of Handmaid's Tale at this point. I feel like it has become a classic. I know that there's a wonderful TV adaptation that I'm really looking forward to watching as well. And the book itself, it's not very long. I know it's quite a difficult read in terms of the subjects. I haven't really heard that much about writing. Like I said, I'm not familiar with Margaret Atwood's writing, but I'm definitely really looking forward to this read. I have, I guess, fairly high expectations. I hope they are correct and I hope I'm not disappointed, but I will read it and then I will see for myself. And the last but most definitely not least is another author that is, I guess, somewhat of a project that I would like to start, or I guess a journey that I would like to embark on, albeit an incredibly long one. And the author that I'm talking about is Stephen King. And the book that I will be reading is Carrie. I have actually read it a good few years ago in Russian translation. I have read a good bit of Stephen King in Russian translation. He is my favorite horror author. He was the first horror author I've ever read and kind of stayed pretty much the only one. I don't really read horror. I get scared very easily, which is funny because Stephen King is my favorite author. I absolutely adore his writing, but I am scared of horrors, and he writes one of the best horrors. Even the books that aren't intended to be horrors are still a little bit creepy, and I can't walk in the dark in the middle of the night to the bathroom, so it's always a bit of an adventure. But as far as I remember, Carrie, it's not a scary book. It's a very short book. I remember the plot pretty well, but I haven't read it in original, so I'm quite excited. Ideally, I would like to pick up a Stephen King book every month and eventually get to the point when I have read everything. How achievable that is going to be, I don't know. I have quite a few of his books on my shelves and I'm really excited for all of them. But unless I'm mistaken, he has written just under 80 books. That includes the publications of the short story collections. So that is quite a few books, and some of them are quite long and quite dense, but I am quite excited to give it a go, at least start with it, and Carrie is going to be the first one. And with all of these wonderful books scheduled for June, I currently have the grand total of 3,103 pages, which brings the total per day or the goal per day to 100 pages on average. That is without me adding any pages for There Is No Anti-Memetics Division. It is quite an optimistic goal. I guess it's probably the most optimistic one I've had in a while. I don't think I have broken an average of 100 pages per day in a long time. I would probably say ever since I made a video of reading 100 pages per day for a month back in, I think it was August 2025. So we'll see how it goes. I mentioned at the start of this video that I'm starting a project, and the project that I'm starting is going to be 75 booked, or at least my own variation of 75 booked. If you don't know what that is, it's sort of a take on 75 Hard, which is a fitness challenge that has become very popular. At least I've seen it being very popular this year. I'm assuming that it was created before this year, but I haven't seen anybody do it before 2026. But anyway, 75 Booked is a bookish variation of that challenge, and I have seen different ways that people approach it. I have seen people do read 75 books and go on a book buying ban for the longevity of the time that it will take you to read 75 books. I have read a variation where people go on a book buying ban for 75 days and then they have certain rules that they have to follow every single day. I have, I guess, taken my own approach to it and sort of adapted it to my life and my personal reading goals and my personal goals. It will be a bit of a combination of reading and being more physically active. So, if you're interested in what that is all going to be about, I'm planning on posting a video either next week or the week after. It's sort of, there's a few moving pieces. The start of next week is going to be a little bit busy. It's my birthday. I'm going to be away, and then a couple of days are going to be a little bit busy, and I won't really have time to film. I want to film a May and birthday book haul. I know I am getting a few books for my birthday. I'm also planning on going to Waterstones and treating myself to a couple of books. I enjoy buying books, so that is going to be my treat for myself. Plus, I have accumulated some books in May that I haven't put on a shelf yet, and I thought it would be fun to make a video. Once that's done, and once that's added to my spreadsheet and my statistics of unread books, then I will make an intro video to 75 Booked, and then I will explain how I'm going to do it, what exactly I'm going to do, and what are the stats of my shelf before I started, so I can then compare the stats when I'm done with the challenge. So if that is something that you're interested in, then follow along on the journey. The best way to do that is to subscribe to this channel. And if you enjoyed this video, then please leave a like. And if you have read any of these books, I'm assuming many of you have, these are quite popular books, then leave a comment down below and let me know what you thought, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.